You know what scares me? Not being broke at 30, not being broke at 40, being 78 years old, looking at my bank account and realizing I have no way to start over. Because when you're young, a mistake costs money. When you're old, a mistake can cost freedom. And after years of watching retirees, I noticed something strange. The ones who live comfortably into their 80s don't buy different things. They stop buying things. And one of those things is probably sitting in your driveway right now. Section 1. Emotional spending. This is the one nobody wants to hear, because it's not about money, it's about emotions. Most spending isn't logical, it's emotional. You're bored, you buy something. You're stressed, you buy something. You're lonely, you buy something. For a few minutes, it feels better. Then the feeling fades, and the bill stays. The retirees who keep their wealth learn one life-changing skill. They stop using money to solve emotional problems. Before every unnecessary purchase, they ask one simple question. Will I still be happy I bought this 30 days from now? That question has probably saved more retirement accounts than any investment strategy ever created. Because in the end, most retirements aren't destroyed by market crashes. They're destroyed by thousands of small decisions that felt harmless at the time. Section 2. Percentage-based advisors. Most people hear 1% and think, no big deal. But money doesn't think in percentages. Money thinks in decades. 1% sounds tiny until compounding enters the conversation. Then that tiny fee becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And here's the scary part. Most people never actually calculate it. They just keep paying, year after year, decade after decade. Not because they're stupid, because nobody showed them the full bill. But even this isn't the biggest threat to retirement. The biggest threat isn't on Wall Street. It's sitting much closer to home. Section 3. Expensive hobbies. Retirement creates a dangerous question. What am I going to do all day? And that's where people accidentally start spending fortunes. Golf memberships, boats, luxury travel clubs. Every hobby seems harmless until you calculate what it costs over 20 years. That's the part nobody talks about. The hobby isn't expensive, the repetition is. Because retirement isn't a weekend, it's decades. A hobby that costs $20,000 a year can quietly become $500,000. Now ask yourself, was the hobby really worth it? Or were you just buying a lifestyle somebody sold you? And speaking of expensive advice, let's talk about the industry quietly collecting money from retirees every single year. Section 4. Luxury status items. I remember realizing something that completely changed how I looked at wealth. The richest people I met looked surprisingly normal. No giant logos, no flashy brands, no desperate need to prove anything. Because once someone becomes truly wealthy, validation loses value. Think about it. A luxury logo only works if someone else notices it. Real wealth doesn't need an audience. That's why so many millionaires look ordinary and so many broke people look rich. One group is buying assets, the other is buying attention, and attention is expensive. But there is one retirement killer that's even worse because people actually call it a hobby. Section 5. Trendy home renovations. Here's a painful truth. Most renovations aren't upgrades, they're fashion. In fashion, age is fast. That dream kitchen everybody wants today will eventually look like avocado green appliances from the 1970s. The problem isn't improving your home. The problem is confusing trends with value. I've seen retirees spend $50,000, $60,000, sometimes $80,000 chasing a look. Then 5 years later, the trend changes, and suddenly they're doing it again. That's when money quietly disappears, not in one massive mistake, but in 1,000 tiny justifications. And that leads directly into the next trap, because some people don't remodel homes to impress themselves. They buy things to impress everyone else. Section 6. Extended warranties. You ever notice what happens right before you pay? You're finally ready to leave, then someone suddenly acts concerned about your future. Would you like the protection plan? Sounds harmless, feels responsible. But here's what most people never stop to ask. If these warranties were such a great deal for customers, why are stores obsessed with selling them? Because the real product isn't protection. The real product is your fear. Fear that something might go wrong. Fear that you'll regret saying no. And fear has always been one of the most profitable businesses in America. The wealthy figured this out years ago. They insured disasters, not inconveniences. Because every tiny protection plan slowly becomes another monthly payment, another leak in the boat. And most people never realize they're sinking until retirement arrives. But wait until you see what retirees spend even more money on, because this next trap can burn tens of thousands of dollars without improving your life at all. Section 7. Brand new cars. Let me tell you something. The wealthiest retirees I ever met had one strange habit. They drove boring cars. Not because they couldn't afford something nicer, because they understood a brutal truth most people never learn. A new car doesn't just lose value, it bleeds value. The second those tires leave the dealership, the clock starts attacking your money. Think about that. You work for years, save thousands, then willingly buy an asset that's almost guaranteed to be worth less tomorrow than it is today. That's not investing, that's volunteering for a financial loss. And here's where the story gets interesting. The millionaire retiree I knew drove a beat-up Camry for over a decade. His neighbor kept leasing luxury vehicles every few years. One retired comfortably, the other kept working into his 70s. Same street, different decisions, very different outcomes. But cars aren't even the biggest trap. The next one is much sneakier because it disguises itself as protection. The people who retire comfortably don't have some secret investments. They simply stop making expensive mistakes. While everyone else keeps buying things, they keep buying freedom. And freedom is the one asset that becomes more valuable every year you own it. So here's my question. Are you building a life that looks rich or a life that actually is rich? Because those are two very different games, and only one of them ends with peace.